Welcome to the EntrePastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the EntrePastors Podcast on YouTube. I'm Jon Sanders. I'm one of the co-founders of EntrePastors, and this is episode number 216. We're going to learn about thriving financially with our guest, Joel Bromley. Now, Joel and his wife, Kaitlin, are not pastors per se. Kaitlin is on staff at a church, but Joel is actually a full-time firefighter, similar to me, and they are financial coaches. They have been on a journey and experienced freedom in their own financial world, and now they are in a place of ministering to others as they build a business around financial coaching and helping other people learn how to thrive with their finances. So it was my honor to bring Joel on the podcast and have a conversation with him, not only about the specifics of the coaching that they do, but the business side of it. How do you build a business around coaching? At EntrePastors, we would call this an example of the information-based pathway, where you are creating a stream of revenue around an idea that you have, or using your intellectual thoughts and processes and products to serve other people versus, serving with your physical labor, that sort of a thing. So Joel and Kaitlin are great examples of the information-based pathway with their financial coaching. So you guys, you're in for a great interview. Without any further ado, let's listen in on this conversation that me and my co-host Les Hughes had recently with our friend Joel Bromley. Check this out. Well, Joel, it is our pleasure to welcome you as a guest to the EntrePastors Podcast, man. Welcome to the show.
Jon, thanks so much for having me. Les, it's good to see you too. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, hey, you and I have gotten to know each other for a while. I think we're both a part of Vincent Puglisi's group, is where you and I met, in a group that teaches us how to build membership communities, which might give a little bit of a hint to our audience of where this conversation is going, at least in part today. But tell the world a little bit about who you are, the work that you do. You and I also share in common that we're full-time career firefighters, in addition to some other similarities. But to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself, if you don't mind.
I am employed as a full-time firefighter in Ontario, Canada. I've been doing that for, it's just about 21 years now in a couple of days. So started that way back when I was a lot younger. And Kaitlin and I have been married for 14 years now. Jesus saved our marriage and about 12 years ago. And we've just been on a journey over the last at least since 2019 to just change how our money works and how we manage our money and stuff like that. So we have 4 kids. We had 4 kids in 5 years. So as you can imagine, that was a little busy. And it still is busy.
Sounds like Kaitlin's a little busy too.
Oh yeah, it's a busy house. They're 14, 13, 12, and 9. So it's all sports all the time and stuff like that. So but yeah, we had gone into, it was my plan was to just accumulate rental properties until somebody told us no, and that somebody ended up being God, and so he placed it on our hearts that that was not his plan, that was my plan. And so in obedience to him, we sold all of our rental properties. And about a year and a bit ago, we had an apartment in our basement, and we said goodbye to those tenants and reclaimed the basement for our growing family, or our family that's growing. And so I've been in the process of refinishing the basement over the last year to try and make that a place for all of us to hang out. But through that process, God really led us down a path to just manage our money better. We weren't doing anything abnormal. It's just what everybody else was doing. We had $2 million in mortgage debt between a bunch of different properties that we had. We had consumer debt, just like everybody else. And God really walked us along a path that kind of took care of all that. So we have no debt except for our primary residence, and he's really changed that a lot. But at church, they actually started asking us about it, and the lead pastor asked us if we'd be interested in leading a small group. And that led us down another path of developing, or looking actually at the time, looking for a program that existed. And there were kind of some, and there was one down in the States, actually, you guys might be familiar with it, that we weren't able to get here in Canada, but we kind of, with Ramsey's blessing, kind of modified it, and we're able to bring our version of it to Canada. And then it just, something was sitting on our hearts that wasn't the path that we were supposed to lead, and there was room at the table for us as well. And so through that process, we've developed our own membership, like you said, our own small group curriculums, and lots of different fun stuff like that we're leading lots of people through. So
cool. We'll unpack all of that. I want to back up in the story just a little bit and ask you this question. So often in, like, when it comes to business and entrepreneurial stuff, we always celebrate the hustle, the go, go, go. We almost never celebrate stories of stopping and selling off rental properties. That's almost always viewed as a step backwards, probably. And yet you said it was, kind of God's voice that told you to do that. Tell us more, if you don't mind. I mean, if it's too personal, you don't have to go into too much detail, but I'd be curious just to hear more about that. When does God step in and say, hey, no, not like that, we're doing it different? Because that's interesting to me.
yeah, so when you have 4 properties, like I said, $2 million in mortgage debt, 17 tenants, 2 full-time jobs, 4 kids, within 5 years, I can't remember what the ages were back then, but it was just busy, go, stress, 2 o'clock in the morning, phone calls for water heaters, and people not paying rent or stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, we had amazing experiences as well. Our basement, we had rented it out to college students during the school year, and then did Airbnb in the summer, and had people from all around the world. There's a map down in the basement still that has little dots from all over, where all the people that came to stay in our basement. And it still blows me away that they would come to our town from all over. But yeah, I think in all of that hustle and bustle and busy and not that it, well, maybe it was taking us away, I think, in that time from what I think that he wanted us to do. And like I said, it was impressed upon my heart that this was my plan. Well, it's not that it's a bad plan, but it was my plan, and that plan was causing our family a lot of stress that he didn't seem to want us to be put through. And so yeah, like it wasn't an audible voice or anything like that, but it was just something that was, just on my heart steady. And it was a weird thing, because it wasn't, my flesh was like, no, we got to keep these things. Like, this is going to be retirement, and this is going to be something that maybe the kids can get into one day, and stuff like that. But that was very clear, not his plan.
One thing, I'll connect some dots, and you can affirm if this is true or not, but this is what I'm reading between the lines. For years, I've had, as a pastor, I've had people ask from time to time, essentially different versions of this question. The bottom line question is, how do I know what God's will is for my life? How do I know when God is speaking to me? And that's a multifaceted answer, but one part of that I often would give is peace. If you're lacking peace about something, that could very well be an indicator that God's trying to direct in a different direction, or vice versa. Sometimes you make a decision that seems on the surface like, man, did I make the right decision? And yet there's just a tremendous amount of peace that comes with that. I'm assuming as you started selling off some of these things, peace returned that maybe was lacking. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think what I found, maybe you have as well, it just, I feel like when I try to do things on my own, I'm constantly bashing my head against the wall. I'm trying to make things happen under my own power, and it just seems like nothing's going the way that I think it should. And yeah, just that piece was not there. And you're right, 100%, that when those properties started to go, although we had a lot of, not pushback, but we had a lot of questions, because I have a lot of friends that buy real estate and stuff like that. They're like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? But it was that, yeah, that piece. And it's funny too, because it was before this market skyrocketed in COVID. So we still did well. But when the market skyrocketed during COVID, it was like, oh man. But at the same time, that piece came back, and it's like, yeah, but oh man, what? That's your version of awesome, but my version of awesome is something way greater. And so I don't know what that is, but I'm excited to see what it is.
Yeah.
How long did that take, Joel, to get out from under all that? Once you really decided to get started?
Once we decided, it was all but for one of the properties, it was really quick. The one property was a triplex in just the town south of us. Great property, but it was 140 years old. Was right downtown, and so it was a colorful clientele, and so it took a special buyer for sure. So that took about a year. But the other couple properties, they were pretty quick. I would say within a couple months, maybe.
Okay.
So, Joel, you are not a pastor, but your wife is on staff with a church, and so she has kind of a back seat to seeing how the sausage is made, so to speak. I'm curious, when you heard about EntrePastors and our message with our platform, what was it that resonated with the work that we're doing with what you and Kaitlin are building? What was kind of the intersection that you saw there?
Yeah, that's right. So I was on the board at our church, and just as I was coming off the board, they were looking for a new ministries coordinator. So Kaitlin does all the administrative stuff at the church, and it's a part-time position. But through being on the board and Kaitlin being on staff, we just see how it's not a just show up for church on Sundays and receive a message and go home and that kind of thing. You see all the kind of the effort that it takes. You might not hear the personal stories and sensitive things that are shared between pastor and congregation and those kinds of things behind closed doors, but you do see all of the effort it takes and all the policies and all the reviews and all the meetings and all the stuff that happens in it. And we are very fortunate, I think, in our church that our pastor, I hope she would agree, that she's paid very well. And again, how can you possibly pay for all the hours and stuff like that that a pastor has to do? But when I heard your guys' message and met you, Jon, just the amount of stuff, like I can't even describe it as more than stuff. Like it's just everything that a pastor has to do, and even in a smaller church, all the things, and then in a bigger church, all the things, so it's I can just imagine where it's maybe not as much of a supported position, or where a church isn't able to pay a salary that's and I know it's not all about money, but money is certainly helpful.
Well, and it's the world you work in as well. It's not just money, but with the business you guys are building, and I would contend the ministry you guys are building out, it's an area that touches every part of our life almost. So
Absolutely.
yeah. And that's one of the themes of EntrePastors. We recognize it's not just about making more money, but it's about what that money does for a pastor and their family, and what opportunities it allows and what it makes possible, and how it can literally alleviate pressure in other arenas of life and ministry when we focus on taking off that financial pressure that so many are under. So that's well said. Do you see, okay, so let's get into your story a little bit more about what you guys are building. In summary, you want to help people with their financial management. You want to help people manage their money God's way. I like what you said, by the way, and maybe let me just start with this, because I want to unpack a little more around this. You mentioned that there's a guy out there some people might have heard of by the name of Dave Ramsey, and it would be easy for someone to look at that and go, he's got a corner on the market. Why do we need anything else? But I love what I heard you say a while back, that there's place for us at the table too. Talk more about that, because I think that's a fear sometimes that a startup business might have of, man, there's already people doing this thing. Someone already wrote a book on that subject. Someone already is doing coaching on that thing. Say more about that. Why did you feel like there's room for you at the table, even though Dave Ramsey's been telling people for years how to deal with their money?
I didn't think that originally. I thought, well, that's obviously, to even start to look into it, we had to think that there was something there for us. But really that something was only that feeling that this is something that we, could do for some people. And it really started very small, just in our church, people just asking. And it was really probably not going to be much more than that, except it just kept happening and kept happening. And it didn't feel like it could be ignored. But you're right. When you have somebody that has such a, marketing budget and a production budget and, 1,000 staff and millions of dollars worth of buildings and stuff like that, how do you compete with that?
And a 25-year head start. Don't miss that either.
Well, that too. Yeah. And I think, I can't remember if it was through Vincent, probably it was, but if not, it doesn't really matter. We have all been through something that somebody else needs. And so this was something that we had been through that nobody else has been through. And I think there's things that, whether it's Dave Ramsey or, Ron Blue before him, there's nothing new under the sun. So what we have, it's all biblical. Just like Ramsey, just like, Blue before that, there's nothing new except us. So the way that we package it, or the way that we have framed it, or the experience that we bring into what we do in our coaching and through the programs that we've designed, I think that's what is unique. And I think so for, whether that's this or pressure washing business or whatever it is, whatever has been placed on your heart, there's something that you bring that's different than that multi-million-dollar company. Not to say that you couldn't be that multi-million-dollar company, but there's something that you bring to it, a customer service thing, an experience that you had that you never want people to experience again through your business and stuff like that. There's something that you bring because you're you. And I think that's what we saw, was that we have an experience like no other. And then there's Kaitlin and I. So Kaitlin is very much the numbers, organized, like she's just been created by God, not like me. And she can look at a situation and come up with a solution or an answer or a way to guide somebody through something that is just incredible to watch. And then I'm able to pick up on the little, social cues, or the little, tilt of the head or whatever, to be able to go deeper in, because money, as far as our business is concerned, money is mostly about emotion, mostly about feeling, and then some to do with the numbers as well. But so I'm able to kind of pick up on those things and stuff. So it's, so just how we've been uniquely made and then uniquely brought together. And then when you pick up the phone and call, unless you're calling Dave's program, you're probably not going to get to talk to him. So there's that too.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's really well said. I'm glad you put it like that, Joel, because this isn't hypothetical for Jon and me. We hear people say some version of that all the time. And in this area specifically, there's not a better example of somebody, at least in North America, who the perception is they kind of own that world than Dave, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that just goes to show that any niche that you're in, or any field that you're in, first of all, you bring some special and unique things to the table that no one else does. And you can take things and nuance them still. There is nothing new under the sun. And you're right, going back to Ron Blue and a little before that, even Larry Burkett, a lot of this material, it's universal truth, a lot of it. So nobody owns that, right? But I like that you had the backbone or the courage or the faith, or maybe a little bit of all of it, to contact that organization and say, hey, we'd like to do something different. What do you think? And you found a way. Basically, you found a way to do it. And so I would say anybody that feels called to a certain area or space, there's a way to do it, even if you believe that somebody else may own it. And Jon and I, early on, Joel, without apology, said, we want to own this space right here. When it comes to people that have a ministry background, that want to do some entrepreneurial things, and we couldn't see anyone out there doing specifically that, we thought we want to own this. But you know what? Even if we don't, we're just going to do our thing. And if somebody else wants to come along, since we've started, we've actually helped some people do very similar things, like very, very similar things than we are. But it's a big world and they have a different voice than we do. And so we're going to encourage them to do it, you know?
I think when you look at it like competition, you'll get drowned by that, right? Like when you start thinking about, even if you have just like what you said about somebody creating something very similar to you, you're playing a different game, right? Like however you
And we can still
are-
collaborate, you know?
Sorry, say again?
We can still collaborate.
That's right.
Help each other.
Yeah, that's right. And that goes back to, your individual experiences and the things that you've individually seen and done, and how you've each helped people and stuff like that can be built on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be looked at like a competition. And
No,
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight that part of your story, Joel, that there's 8 billion people in the world, and just because a few people may be in your space, you're not in there yet. Like that, the world doesn't have your voice on that. There's people you'll reach that Dave Ramsey never will, and vice versa. And so I say that not so much to you, but just as an encouragement to our listeners, that if you're holding off because other people are already in the market, whatever that may mean for the business you're thinking about jumping into, there's room for more in the market. And also,
Zaxby's doesn't stay away from a robe just because there's a Chick-fil-A there.
Right.
On the contrary, they're drawn to it if there's one there already.
Right. And that's the thing I was getting ready to say, is that in some ways, if you're brand new to a market, if there's zero of anybody doing anything that you're thinking about doing, you might not actually have a good idea on your hands. Like maybe you do. Maybe you are truly first to market with something that has never been thought of before. That does happen. But the flip side of that is that it validates the market. The fact that there's already people talking about the thing and doing the thing that you're looking at doing, it validates the fact that there's a need for it. And certainly in your space of people, overcoming poor behaviors and emotional responses around money, that's a thing. It's a real problem, and people need help. People are stuck in that, which then leads to another question, Joel. I want to get into this. Here's another similarity that I see between our worlds. Even though you're not a pastor per se, you are doing something that at first glance would look, A, it would look like ministry, and B, it often is serving people who sort of can't afford to pay you, because most likely if they're reaching out to you, they're already overextended financially. I would say it's the American thing to do. Apparently they do it in Canada similar, spend more than you make. So
Yeah.
Very normal thing to do in our culture, to be overextended financially, overcommitted, deep in debt. And so here's the question: how can you sell your services, your products to someone who A, can't afford, I'm going to use air quotes, can't afford to pay you, and it's ministry? How dare you profit off of biblical? I heard you say it's biblical money management. How dare you profit off of the word of God, and especially selling to people who can't afford it? So there you go. I'll set it up that way. What say you to that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I bet he's never heard something like that before, John.
Well, it's funny because, so kind of back to the last question, but also into this question, it didn't start that way. So what you start out to do might not necessarily be what it ends up looking like. So when we first started out, before we even thought of charging people, we're like, how can we monetize this? Yes, it's something that we've been given an opportunity to do, but also like we have kids and a family, and if we're not, yeah, we could do it as a ministry, but this is also taking time from our family and those kinds of things. So how do we juggle that and stuff like that? So we thought about it. We could get our financial planning licenses or selling insurance or whatever, and pay for it that way. And the coaching would just be kind of a side to that, or a complementary thing to that. And we're like, no, we don't want to sit across the table from somebody and then question if we're trying to sell them or upsell them on some investment that's going to profit us or whatever. So we threw that idea aside, and then we're like, okay, well, we could join up with benefits groups, and benefits groups, maybe they would offer that to people. But what we found is that if somebody's not paying for something, they have no skin in the game. They don't take it seriously. Mm-hmm. So you'll get people that don't show up. You'll get people that kind of do it here and there, and it's not life changing. It doesn't do what we think that this program can do. So the charging one is kind of an accountability thing. Two, it's not just we're not charging for God's word. It's, there is time and effort and knowledge and education and those kinds of things that have gone into it. But it's also, and it would be really easy to look at it from a business standpoint if you had a business with return on investment, right? So if I was a business and I put this much money into my business and I got this much back, that would be a good investment. If I invested in myself from a business aspect, more education or some kind of qualification, and then I would get a better paying position, or I would be able to charge more in the marketplace, that would be a good thing. It's a weird thing. We don't do that personally. You guys do that a lot more in the States. In Canada, personal development isn't as big of a thing. So there's no budget for that per se in a lot of Canadian households. Whereas I found in a lot of American families, that pursuit of growth or knowledge or qualification is a lot more, it's an easier hurdle to jump. But to answer the how can we charge for a ministry? Yeah, it's a ministry, but a lot of it has to do with the accountability, and a lot of it has to do with what's been put into it. And I think a lot of it has to do with we're trying to help people do better with their money so that God can free them from these handcuffs, this prison really that a lot of people are in, so that they can go off and do God's work and do that better and free of what they're being held back from. And when you look at what the cost is compared to so we've put out surveys after each of our programs, and from those surveys, people that have gotten back to us, so it's not even everybody, but including debt repayment and contributions to savings, the average person has been able to pay off and put towards debt over $58,000. And the cost of our financially thriving small group is $50. That's over 1,000 times ROI if you're looking at it from a business standpoint. And so it's really, I don't know if that answers the question, but it's the cost a lot comes into the accountability and actually showing up and putting into it. When I have put an investment in something, I'm probably going to show up to it. I'm probably going to implement it. And then once they get through the door of that, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wasn't already doing this.
Yeah, no, you knocked it out of the park. I wanted to hear you say it in your own words. Obviously, I'm not asking from the standpoint of an antagonist. I'm speaking to that listener right now, that they're hearing that voice. They've heard it for way too long. The minute they start thinking about doing something that is business, and yet they've had this ministry mindset their whole life, there's this instant kind of conflict from within of, man, how can I make money because I'm in ministry? So I'm not supposed to make money. And we always encourage our audience, just so you know, Joel, to have wisdom. Like, we don't encourage our pastors to necessarily build a business and try to sell directly to your own congregation. Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing against that. If there's some clear boundaries there, it can get a little weird if the ministry side of the business is, coaching and gets into some of those more, intangible results. But here's what I want our audience to hear is, what I heard you say as you shared your story is that there are tangible results that you're helping people get that far outweigh the cost. And so the theme that we celebrate here often, and that you're really getting to the heart of in your answer, is that business is ministry, that there's not this difference of you're either in business or you're in ministry, but it's one or the other. It can absolutely be both. And I can be in a for-profit business that is providing ministry to others, that's providing a service that's very valuable, that's transformational, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and in your case, financially. So it's valid. And so I appreciate you kind of working through that. because obviously, again, I'm not asking you to justify yourself to us. I just want to hear other people hear how you approach that, because you're kind of operating in an area that a lot of people could look at and go, man, that feels more like ministry than business. And yet we say, yes, it is. It's both. So any other thoughts you have on that whole conversation?
I think too, it's not just people that are in trouble. Like we have certainly coached people that are on government assistance, but we've coached people that have millions of dollars in the bank, and it's at different stages. It means different things.
Sure.
There's just different zeros on the end of it, but people are trying to do, at least people that we've coached or people that seek us out, or they're looking to do something. And yeah, I think, and I think I've read, you've written things like this, and you've certainly said things like this, that there's this idea that we have to, if we're going to be doing something for the Lord, we have to do it for free. We have to give it away. We have to, be in poverty with it or whatever. But that's not been our experience. Certainly, I think, again, in consultation with the Holy Spirit, with the right motivation, with the right heart, those kinds of things. I mean, if we were going into this and the heart of it was to make millions of dollars, and people are just going to pay, and we don't really care what the results are, but from Kaitlin and I's heart, we absolutely care, and we count ourselves lucky that we get to be, like, you think of yourself going to a baseball game, a hockey game, and be front row, and be able to see what the players are going through, be able to see things that are happening in real time and things that are being said. Like, we get those front row seats to the life change of people. And yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, very good. So let's talk about this briefly. Your guys, what you're building would fit into what we call the information-based pathway, where you're essentially creating some revenue around an idea, a thought, something that you're creating with your mind more so than a physical hands-on, service that you're providing. So I would just love to hear from your own experience. What has been some of the challenges that you have faced as you've gotten started in this? Because I think probably, Les, you can push back if you disagree with this. I would contend probably the majority of our audience is most drawn to this pathway, not necessarily specifically money management, but the information-based pathway. Most pastors, it's using muscles that are well equipped to use in terms of creating, writing, speaking, that sort of thing. When you guys set out to kind of build a platform, and I know you said early on that wasn't even necessarily the plan, this has kind of evolved, but what have been some of the challenges that you guys have faced, the sticking points along the way of launching an information-based business?
Kaitlin and I are not typically people that initially pay somebody else to do something for us. We'll try to work it out ourselves or learn something. And so through our, Kaitlin designed our website, our information and learning platform that we use. Kaitlin has learned all of that and learned how to, there's a lot of like plug and play ones, but the one that we happen to go with is not plug and play. And so she had to learn different coding and all those kinds of things. So there's a huge learning curve that we had to go through to design the thing that we wanted to design. It just happened the way that, the things that we wanted to do kind of had to be a certain way. And now that's not to say that they'll be that way forever. Maybe we'll find something else that works better or different, or get to a point someday where we're not the ones that have to do the things. But that was a big thing at first. Getting over the whole imposter syndrome was big in itself. To go through and learn all the things we had to learn, so that when somebody, asked us the question of, why we're qualified, or why do you say, or why do you think you can do these kinds of things, just getting over those kinds of things. And that was a lot of putting other people around us. We had been part of a group of financial coaches all across the world, headed out of Minnesota. But so just being part of that group was a big help to gain that confidence. Then we were able to leave that because we had confidence and we had, how we were doing things all ironed out. There was some other roadblocks that we hit. Other people in the financial industry thought we were trying to steal their clients. So when we'd sit down with financial advisors or insurance professionals and stuff like that to try and partner with them to say, hey, if your people are doing better financially because they know how to manage their day-to-day money, that's going to help them invest more money with you, which is going to bring you better income. It's going to help them financially into the future with retirement and those kinds of things. And there was this, constant, I described it earlier about hitting my head against the wall. So I'm sure that wasn't God's plan for us, but that constant, you're just going to steal our clients. You just want to steal our clients. So there was a lot of education that we had to do for other people. We had to educate other people about what we did. And in Canada, financial coaches aren't a thing, right? So there's debt consolidation. There's organizations that deal with people that are like in dire straits, and that's not we can help people like that. We know a lot of people that we can bring those people to. It's not necessarily our specialty, but that's kind of what was out there, and so that's what people thought we did. So there's this constant education of other people about what we're doing, and then getting the word out there. We created the programs, we created the membership, we created the workplace financial wellness, our financially thriving small group, biblically based small group. But having all those things doesn't matter if nobody knows about it. So, getting out there, getting the word out there, meeting with people. Vincent's taught us a lot about that through membership freedom. So it's knowing people and getting out there and building relationships has been a huge thing too. So
yeah, I'll put a huge exclamation point behind that, because again, I think I've seen it a lot, and also I've done it several times in my life, and where you create a product only to find out nobody's asking for that, because I have not really built the relational component of it. I've not really had the conversations with people. I'm just creating something based on my own experience, and then I throw it out there for sale and find out no one's actually buying the thing I'm wanting. And that's, as you mentioned, in Vincent Puglisi's group, who we've had him as a guest on this podcast before. That's one of the major components of building a membership community that he hits on all the time, is you've got to be connecting with people, not in a salesy way, just trying to get something from them, but actually curious about where they are and how you can serve them. And again, that's what business is. Good business is that. It's solving a problem in the marketplace. It's built upon relationships, and it's very spiritual. At the end of the day, it's a very spiritual process of caring for other people, meeting needs that other people have. And so, yeah, to build out anything in the information-based pathway, it's not just creating a course or putting out a podcast. So you actually need to start getting to know people and have those connections and conversations. So, well, man, I'm proud of you guys, the work that you're doing. I'm happy to know you. Let me ask this. If somebody is listening to this and they're like, I need a financial coach, what does it look like for someone to reach out to you and connect with you and Kaitlin and learn more? Feel free to share those details with us.
Yeah, you can just go to our website, bromleyfinancialcoaching.com. I'm on Facebook, so you can look me up there, Joel Bromley. And I'm just starting to get back into LinkedIn, but that's it's in the works. But what I'm most excited about right now is our financially thriving program. We actually just had a meeting a couple weeks ago, I guess now, with a pastor about this program, and their sentiment was we hear about people's struggles with money all the time. People come to us, or just even in conversations about the congregation, pastors and staff will share stories about what's going on in the church so that everybody can be aware of needs and those kinds of things. And so this pastor was saying, we have these needs, and we know that these needs are out there. And I could try to design something. I could try to, get somebody in to speak. But what I love is that you guys have already done this for us. So through having them go through the program themselves, so they know what they're endorsing and that kind of thing. But it's just, what I realized through that conversation was that there are some things that people are just not, whether it's not training or education, or they're just not equipped, they've never been shown how. And so we're able to come alongside pastors now for their own finances, but also through their churches and stuff like that. And this particular pastor was very excited about that. So that's excited me. And so we've been talking to lots of pastors and getting this into their churches and helping their people. And it's been successful in our church and other places too. So we're just really excited about that.
Good. Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is it's not just coaching you could offer to a pastor and their family, but really a program that you have ready made to bring to their church as well, if that would be of benefit. So we will put all of your links in the show notes, Joel, and if anyone wants to reach out, we'll highly encourage them to contact you guys and connect and see what doors might open there. So we're grateful for your time, grateful for the work that you're doing, man. Anything else that you want to cover before we wrap things up today? Anything you were hoping I asked you that I didn't ask you?
No, I'm just really thankful for the relationship that we built, and for you just trusting me to come onto your show to talk to your audience, and hopefully I was of some help. And there's so much more that we couldn't possibly cover in this conversation. But if anybody in your audience ever needs anything as far as bouncing ideas off of or talking about programs, or just, hey, I'm in this situation, what do you think? We're more than happy to have a conversation. So reach out anytime.
Or a place to stay in Canada. Sounds like you got some room.
Or a place to stay in Canada.
So there you go. All right, man. Well, all the best. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Jon. Thanks, Les.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.